I was born with cerebral palsy. I thought I knew my story. Over the last 2 years, my story has completely changed. I feel like I'm in one of those stories that you read about. I've undergone like 10 to 15 surgeries. I've learned how to walk 3 different times in my life. The doctors told my parents, we don't know what Justin will accomplish in life.
What the eyes were doing was a reflection of how your brain was functioning. Based off of the trauma and the damage that happened in utero, you came out not being able to access all the areas of the brain that you could or should. This wasn't an eye muscle strength or length issue. This was, your world was so constricted and so distorted to one side because your brain was having a hard time filtering, processing, using all the input coming in through the eyes. And it said, I'm gonna just not listen to right, I'm gonna just pick left eye because there's too much confusion I can't navigate.
It was a disaster that so many of my actions and the way that I operate through life were based on survival. I remember going home that Friday night and I was in the hotel room alone and I was sitting in bed and I realized for the first time I could see the wall to the right of me. The doctor said, hey, let's write down some things you've never done in your life. I haven't caught a ball. The doctor walked across the room with 12 beanbags and threw them to me from all different placements in the room. And I caught 11.
What we've just heard about is not just a change in eyesight. Your energy levels shifted. Your physical balance shifted. Your stamina and energy levels shifted.
Vision is influences everything in life. Happiness, navigating through space, ability to read, ability to engage, ability to connect with our world. And your brain was on overdrive, not able to take your dominant sense of vision and know what to do with it. Honestly, for the first time ever, I am showing up to work every day, loving what I'm doing. Damn, I'm getting emotional here. And doing this from entirely my heart. I have more energy than I've ever had because you've helped me systematize this to get to a place where I can have a massive impact on the world.
It's an aligned incentive that everybody's far more excited about than this old fee-for-service model that was really not designed for the work that you do. Welcome to the Freedom RX podcast. My name is Seth Conger, and I am your host. And today we are discussing a topic that is really close to home for me. I am with my friend, former client, Dr. Bryce Appelbaum of MyVisionFirst. Bryce is the CEO and founder of MyVisionFirst and also medical director. What you're going to hear in today's conversation is something that we don't hear about very often. We're going to be talking about vision and vision as a lead domino to so many other symptoms and conditions that we see or mislabel in medicine. And Bryce is one of the most brilliant individuals. We've become very close friends over the years. You've helped my family directly. You've helped a number of my friends, one of which I'm going to surprise you with today and bring you in the middle of our conversation to really show the power of the work that you're doing. But we met through a mutual friend, actually your brother-in-law, one of my friends, and that beautiful day has spawned into something that I could never imagine. And just to give you, the audience, a little preview of what we're going to be experiencing and talking about today, this is like figuring out the microbiome for the first time, that it has an impact on everything from brain function to balance to skin, rashes, and everything else. This is what we're talking about with vision, but probably an order of magnitude more. So this is going to be a really cool conversation. What we're not going to do is jump into a lot of the consumer side. I really encourage you to actually go listen to other podcasts that Bryce has done with people like Rangan Chatterjee, Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Peter Crone, so many other individuals who have interviewed you on beautiful podcasts that really drop into that consumer side of things. We're going to try to keep this actually medically focused and then business focused around why does this whole thing work in the first place. So Bryce, thanks for being with us today.
Honored to be here. So psyched for this conversation, and thank you for organizing this.
Of course. So let's start with the easiest and most top level question. What is vision?
Ooh, all right. So vision is very different than eyesight. And healthcare has it all wrong about the eye. So let me just start by saying that. So most people who've been to the eye doctor know that you go in, you're in this dark room, you're reading the small letters on the faraway letter chart, and you're seeing your 20/20, 20/50, 20 whatever. Eyesight is our ability to focus light clearly. Eyesight is a symptom, and that's what glasses are for. Vision, on the other hand, is so much more complex. Vision is how our brain filters, organizes, stores, processes all the information coming in through the eyes, so how to make sense of it, derive meaning, and then direct the appropriate action. So eyesight is glasses, vision is brain, and functional vision problems are brain problems. And they're also everywhere, which we're going to hear about today.
So we're thinking about the eyes as more of a part of the sensory system, but one of the most important, right? Where we take so much information in, and not just touch, is it hot or cold, or where that is in space, or hearing, what is the pitch and what is the noise or volume level. But there are multiple different dimensions of sensory information coming through the eyes. I think it's, 60%, 80%? What's the amount of information that we're taking in from our eyes as far as information of the world around us?
Well, so studies will say 80% of what's learned in the classroom comes through the visual processing of information. But I would say at a minimum, at least 50% of the real estate in our brain is dedicated to vision. And that's not eyesight. That's the processing of input and the organization of how our eyes, brain, and body work together. And I know I'm biased, but vision is the most dominant sensory system. There are more areas of our brain dedicated to processing vision than all of the other senses combined. 2/3 of the neurons coming into our brain originate from the eyes. So functional vision problems and how we're using and accessing our brain to control our eyes and to take in the world, I mean, that is something that impacts every single person, but at different levels.
So I want to talk about the downstream effects of that, but let's actually start back with the thing that most people are familiar with eyesight. So what are eyesight problems? And we talked about glasses, but like what are some of the eyesight problems and typical solutions that optometrists actually deal with on a daily basis?
And this is really the low-hanging fruit. So we've got nearsightedness, which is the medical term for myopia.
Yeah.
Far away is blurrier than it is up close. Farsightedness, which is hyperopia, and that's essentially meaning that the brain has to work extra hard at every distance to control the focusing system, the inside muscles of the eyes, to make something clear and keep it clear. We have astigmatism, which is really simply put kind of the front surface of the eye being shaped a little bit more like a football than a basketball. But what's really fascinating is take something like myopia. When we landed on the moon in 1969, about 1/4 of America was nearsighted. Right now, it's at about 44% of America. And if we look at that from a global perspective, 30% of the world is nearsighted. And it's estimated by 2050, 50% of the world will become nearsighted. And that's because of vision. That's because of the environment we all live in and not having the visual foundational skills and abilities in place to support those demands. From screen time, from too much new work, from not getting outside, from not getting natural lighting. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. But myopia is increasing at an alarming rate. And most people think that the only solution available is stronger glasses or contacts, or different glasses or contacts, which really just treats that symptom, but doesn't address the root cause, the problem, which is the vision piece. So it's the eyes not working well together as a team, whether that's the eye coordination systems and a convergence insufficiency, or the eye focusing systems, accommodative insufficiency or accommodative infacility, or just a tracking problem, an oculomotor dysfunction. What is happening up close is often manifesting as far away, being blurry, because the system doesn't have flexibility. So if we think of that focusing system as like an old school camera lens, If we have that lens on autofocus, things are clear at every distance. But if it's stuck on manual focus because of too much of this, then far away gets compromised because we don't have the elasticity of that functional system.
So can glasses fix eyesight? Will you ever go back to normal eyesight by wearing glasses and increasing your prescription?
No chance. Glasses, I guess, fixes the symptom of things being blurry.
Yep.
But just acutely, because there's a brain and a person attached to those eyes that is adapting to the environment. And so often what happens is you get the right magic prescription that makes something blurry and turns it clear, but then that becomes your new normal. You then adapt to that, and then need something stronger or different to maintain that same clarity. So in some cases, it actually can feed the problem because it's almost acting as a crutch. Now, I'm not anti-glasses. I'm not anti-contacts. I wear contacts myself. But really the ideal prescription for anybody should be the weakest lenses possible that give the most improvement to performance, that are the most balanced between each eye. So we should really be shooting for a 20 happy prescription rather than HD eyesight and seeing 20/20. And just like if you wanted your patient's blood pressure to be at a target level and a 100 milligram pill gets you there, but so too does a 10, from my standpoint, always prescribe the 10. But then also, if you can figure out why the blood pressure is elevated and you address that root cause, they probably don't even need the medication. Such a similar parallel with vision and with eyesight, and how glasses can really only act as a Band-Aid in many scenarios.
So it's almost like glasses are like the proton pump inhibitors for reflux, right? And when you're taking them, you're good until all of a sudden you're not, and then you need to up your dose. But behind the scenes, actually, it's getting worse and it's getting weaker because you're not fixing the root cause.
And this may sound hyperbolic, but an adult whose prescription is changing far away, that is neon lights and a red flag saying there is a functional vision problem here. Your prescription should not change if it is the right prescription and the brain function and the eye-brain connection are optimized the way that they're supposed to be. That should be steady and not change.
So eyesight, tip of the iceberg, like tip of the iceberg, right? Let's switch the conversation to vision. What are the vision problems and what's the downstream effect of that when we're actually talking about brain function and how this thing translates from your eyes as a organ, right, to the brain, which is processing all this?
Vision is a direct reflection of brain function. So one of the most common vision problems, something called a convergence insufficiency, being unable to see a clear single image as it's approaching you down your midline. 1 out of 4 kids has a functional vision problem significant enough to impact learning. So often that stems from poor coordination of the eyes together as a team and the inside and outside muscles of the eyes not working together in synergy. So this convergence insufficiency, or an oculomotor dysfunction, a tracking problem where when you're reading across the page, you're skipping over words or undershooting or overshooting, or an accommodative dysfunction where things are blurry because you can't get the inside muscle system to stay locked in. These influence so many aspects of life. They influence attention. I mean, any change in eye movement is a change in attention. And if you cannot control your eyes and their ability to focus, then it becomes really hard to control your mind and its ability to focus. So what that means is very often ADD, ADHD, or even dyslexia, those are incomplete diagnoses unless functional vision problems are ruled out first, because functional vision problems can cause the exact same symptoms and behaviors, and they're treatable. And we do not have a blood test that measures ADD or ADHD or dyslexia. It's based off of symptoms and behaviors. So really, these vision problems can show up in that poor coordination, but they can also show up in poor depth perception. The ability for both eyes to point and act like in the same place for long enough that the brain can turn on to that information and perceive in 3D. None of us are born with depth perception. None of us are born with the ability to read or to track or to focus. All of these skills are developed through the right sequencing of developmental milestones and from learning from our life experiences. So then that learning can either occur at the right sequence or it can learn poorly, which leads to these vision imbalances. And when we talk about the eyes not working well together as a team, that can show up also as strabismus, which is the medical term for an eye turn, an eye pointing in a different place than the other, or amblyopia, which is the medical term for lazy eye, one eye not being able to see as clearly as the other, even with any magic combination of lenses. Amblyopia and strabismus, those are brain problems showing up through the eyes. And unless they're addressed on a brain basis, the solutions or treatment options that are attempted to be out there barely scratch the surface. And when you think about, the old school treatment that many doctors are still prescribing, like eye patching, it's saying you have a good eye and you have a bad eye, and let's take the good eye and cover it so that the bad eye has to function. We now have the research and literature to show what my profession has known for a long time, that a lazy eye is a brain problem and a two-eye problem just showing up on one eye. So if we address it on a brain basis and on a two-eye basis with more advanced treatments, we can equalize those skills, and any brain at any age can be rewired based off of neuroplasticity, which we know exists, to make it so that vision can unlock potential and the eyes can work together as a team.
So, we hit a couple of these medical diagnoses that I think are pretty easy to spot, right? And you've uncovered, and I think said very astutely, they're incomplete diagnoses without considering vision as a major component to it. But ADHD, dyslexia, a lazy eye, right? Like any of that stuff, we can kind of spot. What are all the symptoms beneath this that may be the canaries in the coal mine for people that they could be blaming on other things, right? Because it gets this whole world of functional integrative medicine, it gets really complicated because your dizziness could be coming from a food intolerance. It could be coming from mold in your environment. It could be coming from a concussion. It could be coming from all of these other things. And what I've slowly started realizing over time since knowing you is that, we've always known there's a priority of looking at stuff, but I don't think anybody's considering vision in that priority. And what I've learned is we almost have to look there first when we see a symptom that is tracking from brain function. So what are some of those other symptoms that you're looking for right on the early side to say, hey, this could be a vision problem. It could be something else, but there could be a vision problem potentially layered on or as the primary for this symptom.
And you hit two of the main ones right on the head in terms of dizziness, nausea, or motion sensitivity. So often that's due to the visual system and the vestibular systems sending conflicting signals that the brain can't interpret or filter.
All right. I got to stop you there. So we're driving in a car, yep. Right? And there is a reason why people don't get sick when they're holding onto the steering wheel and driving, and they do get sick if they are sitting in the back seat having a conversation. What that has to do with the visual system?
Absolutely. So anyone who's listening, if you are in the back seat or on a phone or on a tablet or not driving and motion sickness is there or worse, but when you're driving, it's so much more tolerable or non-existent, that is literally your brain not filtering input from your eyes and from the rest of your body to feel safe. The vast majority of motion sickness has to do with the eyes and how our brain filters and processes central focal visual input with peripheral ambient visual input. And in the brain, these two pathways are wired together so that I can look straight ahead, see the camera, but notice what else is in the room here. But when we're in a car and we're in the back seat, we're on a tablet or on our phone, our eyes are sending signals to our body that we're static and that we're stationary, and the seat in front of us or the book in front of us is not moving. Yet our internal GPS system and the roadmap of life, our vestibular system, is setting the signals, oh no, you're in dynamic motion. And then this disequilibrium occurs. But when you're driving, you can actually plan for what's coming. You can access periphery more easily. You can plan based off of the eye movements needed, how your body's adjusting, and you can avoid so much unnecessary struggling. So from the motion sickness standpoint, I would say at least 80% of motion sickness, probably a lot more, has a functional vision problem associated that is treatable or improvable. So that's probably one of the most common ones that impacts so many people. But even, reading. If we're resistant to reading or reluctant to reading, or using reading as a sleeping pill to help us fall asleep faster at night because it's so taxing or fatiguing. Or when we are reading, we're losing our place, we're skipping words, skipping lines, we're not remembering what we're reading, we're having to reread, or we're thinking about what's for dinner or what I forgot to do rather than what we're digesting from the page. That has to do with the eyes not working well together as a team. Same thing with too much screen time. And too much screen time could be a very small amount for somebody. Too much for one person is very different than too much for another. But the decreased productivity throughout the school or work day, the brain fog that can come when we're just exhausted because it's so much effort to use our eyes and our brains on overload to try and control that system, that absolutely has a functional visual component. We look at the ability to catch a ball, to know not only where the ball is, but to anticipate where it will be, so we can rely on vision to prepare our body to respond accordingly. That is related to vision. So anyone who has a child or who as a child felt like throwing was so much easier than catching, and catching you're looking away or you don't know where it is or it's hitting you too soon, that's vision related. Somebody who is pulling a tablet or book really close and leaning in, that almost always has to do with the focusing system, not having the stamina or flexibility that it needs to. Throughout the day, just noticing fatigue and tired eyes, strained eyes, blurred vision, headaches. All of these symptoms have a visual component that are treatable. And so much of them we just accept as normal because we think, all right, we're in this digital world and we just have to deal with it. But although most brains don't have the capacity to handle that yet, any brain can be trained to be able to withstand that amount of visual stress with the right foundation so that we can thrive in this very digitally heavy world that we're all in.
You know, as you're talking about this, it makes me think about this giant missing gap that we have. And it would almost be like if people were complaining about, you know, I can't get up and move. They're like, oh, have you heard about this thing called exercise? Or I'm way overweight and I don't know what to do. You know that nutrition can actually have an impact on this. Or I have these crazy thoughts constantly going on in my head and it's always chaos up there. Did you know that there's a thing called cognitive behavioral therapy or other types of talk therapy or even other things we can do for mental health? And this just seems like no one's having this conversation around all of those symptoms and all the conditions that you just listed off. And I know there's more and more and more and more, right? We just hit on a few of the major ones. We're not considering that there's something we can do to improve our visual system, to actually have a downstream, a positive effect across the board in a holistic way. So we've known about, and I think most of our viewers have known about this thing called vision therapy for a lot of years. And they may not have leaned into it because it's kind of like occupational therapy or physical therapy. Like it's going to take a long time. We're not sure of what the result's going to be. Yes, there's literature behind this, but it's for these specific conditions. And man, it's just like, it's a big uphill battle to do this. And what I would love to hear from you, because what I think you've cracked the code on is something really unique, right? And you call it vision performance training, which is actually distinctly different than just your conventional vision therapy, which is already a step well beyond doing nothing.
Actually.
And I think you're a product of a world of learning this for your entire life that has allowed you to open up something that I think is truly evolutionary and maybe even revolutionary, right, in this whole field. And can you share the difference between those two and maybe even just give us a little bit of what is vision therapy? What is vision performance training? And where are you seeing those benefits?
Yeah, so vision therapy, really simply put, is kind of like physical therapy for the eyes, but really for the brain through the eyes. And I'm a product of vision therapy. As a child, I had terrible visual developmental delays. I had an alternating eye turn. I had very reduced depth perception. I was lost on the soccer field. In the classroom, I had no idea what was going on. And I really struggled with interpersonal connection because I felt like in so many aspects of life, I was this turtle retreating to a shell because vision was not the dominant sensory system it was supposed to be. And it made me feel really insecure. And fortunately, I was born to the perfect parents who gave me the opportunity to do this type of work where I went from being a reluctant reader to an avid reader. I went from being the last one picked on sports teams to a stud athlete with any sport that required eye-hand coordination. I went from being insecure to this confident kid because I learned how to use my eyes to rewire the software of my brain to change how I was using vision, but to establish order from a lot of the disorder that was occurring. And that was vision therapy. It was life-changing. I did it for years. And in studying, obsessing, and evolving this space as much as I have been able to over the last decades, we've really landed on something similar but entirely different. And that's what we call visual performance training or vision performance training, which really takes a holistic approach and a bunch of different modalities and kind of creates this hybrid that incorporates thinking and movement and balance and vestibular input with the vision work. So it takes a lot of pieces of old school vision therapy or vision training with sensory integration-based occupational therapy, with vestibular-based BT, with neurofeedback and cognitive behavioral therapy, and creates this cross-training approach where, yes, we are getting the eyes to work better together as a team. Yes, we are dialing in the eye-brain-body integration. But we're also taking all of that and then allowing it a much faster and easier opportunity to integrate into that person. So it doesn't just become a set of tools in their tool belt. It becomes this integrative approach that is unconscious, is efficient, is automatic, and is the new default mode for taking in the world and deriving action for what we need in our world. And although vision therapy helps a lot of people, for many people, it barely scratches the surface because it is work to improve test results. And obviously, we need to improve test results to know we're doing the right type of work. But then it just becomes these splinter skills. And maybe somebody can now converge their eyes to their nose, but reading is still super hard. Or maybe they have more fluid eye movement control across midline, but there's still a spatial mismatch and they're perceiving things farther back in space or closer than space and where they're located. And so when they're back on the screen, when their visual system's locked in, they're going back to these old maladaptations. So really with any good therapy, any good treatment, if we're eliminating the maladaptations, if we're getting rid of the roadblocks to allow the brain to actually operate the way in which it's wired, then vision development continues along that smooth linear path up the mountain. But then once it's where it needs to be, we can then access vision as a way to enhance and optimize performance when it comes to reading and learning, sports, navigating through space, driving, especially at night when there's less visual input to make sense of, when we can not be hesitant around stairs or escalators, when we're not bumping into things or knocking over a glass of water because we're not as spatially secure with vision as we should be. So I know this sounds a little aggressive, but vision is a part of everything we do in life, including interpersonal connection and our ability to even have a conversation with somebody and feel confident in our own skin, because vision allows us to be present in our body and where we are in space so we can then show up the way that we really want to and deserve to in so many areas of life.
You know, in just a second, I'm going to bring in a friend of ours, a patient of yours, and I think we're going to hear a lot about this in a firsthand account from this individual. But what I'm hearing the difference between vision therapy and vision performance training is it's a more almost like human-centric, a more hyper-personalized approach to this, where you're not just trying to hit a metric and raise a bar, right? You are actually saying, what is everything going on and how can we simultaneously affect all of that through directing the actual performance training on a day-to-day basis by saying, are we making shifts and changes here and how is that affecting the rest of the system? And I think that's a really important piece for the audience to hear and for us to recognize that this was the beginning of functional and integrative medicine.
And I think a really neat parallel is if we look at all of these visual skills and abilities that we're talking about as metrics and blood work, right? All the doctors run blood work here, but that's just data.
Yeah.
let's optimize those metrics, but then let's also take a customized, personalized approach where we're looking at lifestyle and nutrition and supplementation and toxicity from our environment to then allow those changes from targeting the right blood work and the shifts in blood work to then open up somebody's opportunity to find longevity and wellness and happiness. And from a vision therapy standpoint, it's, let's get the visual skills and abilities to where they need to be, but then let's put the pieces of the puzzle together so that they can all become a part of that person so it's theirs to keep, and that they can then show up in an entirely different way where their brain is operating the way that it's supposed to, rather than being in this state of fight or flight where visual function completely shifts when you're locked in versus when you're opened up and able to have vision take over so much of how we show up.
Wow. So, the guest that we have today is what I would consider a miraculous case, a miracle that most people would consider. And I remember thinking when I first met him, like, oh shit, I may have overpromised to this guy. This is a hard case, and now I got to call Bryce and see if he can actually work with this. And you were like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I've worked with multiple people with cerebral palsy, and we have a tremendous effect. And yeah, what he's going through, like, absolutely put him on the phone with me. And I think that's, I've now sent a lot of people to you, children, adults, friends, relatives, my own son, my wife is about to come in. It's the proudest moment as a referrer to know I can send somebody without even having to think in the back of my head, like, what if this doesn't work? What if this person drops a lot of money? What if this person flies across the country and doesn't get the results that they want? Because what you're doing is so leading edge and such a dramatic difference from what people believe is possible that every single time it comes back as, wow, I am so happy I did that.
I would say everybody would benefit from this work, but not everybody needs this work. And we're really thorough with screening, because I like to always say we underpromise, we overdeliver, but this isn't for everybody. And the gentleman that I think is going to be coming in here, can confidently say that 99.9% of eye doctors would say where he is, what he sees is what he gets, and nothing can go beyond that because things are too complicated and the brain doesn't work that way. And it for sure takes the right special person who's motivated and compliant, but who does the right work. And just like exercise works and physical therapy works, you got to know what to do. You got to do the right work. You got to be doing it for the right reasons. And you got to have the right guide, making sure we're doing it the right sequence of learning in the right way. And to fix structural problems for sure improves function. To improve or address functional problems, of course, improves function. But so often structural problems emerge because of functional problems. We have a patient who's 92 right now developing depth perception for the first time. It's a little slower than at 9, but with the right work, right motivation, right compliance, so much unnecessary struggling can be avoided and can be in the rearview mirror if we know what to do and have access to this type of work.
It's amazing. Well, we're gonna talk a little bit later in this conversation also about if people don't need the intensive work, what they can do, right? Kind of like a gym membership for Vision Potential and all of the work you're doing around your ScreenFit product that's now going out to hundreds of thousands of people, and all of that. But I think let's dive into the most complex, and then we'll pull back out in the conversation to a little bit more of like, what is this on a global level? So you guessed it, but let's bring in our friend Justin, have a conversation with him.
Yes.
Okay. So Bryce, we've been talking about vision, then we talked about vision performance training and vision therapy. And I thought it would actually be really nice if we, as I mentioned earlier, that we brought in somebody that we both know very well. This is Justin Levy. Justin is the executive director of Conscious Alliance. Justin and I met actually at a concert at Red Rocks. He took us backstage. If you want to know how to get backstage at Red Rocks, talk to Justin. And we met and had an amazing experience together, not knowing each other beforehand. And it is one of the most miraculous stories that I could possibly think of when it comes to the work you do. And you happen to be in town for this. Justin lives here. And so I thought it'd be really cool if we could continue this conversation almost like a real world scenario and bring in somebody who's had such a personal impact with this. So a little bit of that backstory. Justin and I met at a concert, but we were sitting backstage with my favorite band, Tedeschi Trucks Band, and literally eating dinner with them. And I could not pay attention to the band because I was just locked in having a conversation with you. And you told me this whole story. And I don't know why you trusted me and my wife right off the bat, but it was just this immediate trust between us where you went into the whole story of how you were born with cerebral palsy, the current symptoms and challenges that you experience with that whole situation. And then we kind of narrowed in on vision being one of the common denominators with all of this stuff. And I said, have you ever done vision therapy? Have you ever thought about vision performance training? I said, I have to make this connection with Bryce. And you just flat out believed me. I made the connection between the two of you. And next thing I know, you booked a trip to fly across the country to go spend a week with Bryce to do this vision performance training. And day one, I get a picture, a selfie of you and Bryce hanging out together, doing this training. And then the rest is a pretty miraculous story. And so I would love for you, Justin, to share a little bit about the backstory of like, what were the challenges that you went through as a kid and early in your adult life and even in your mid-adult years, and what shifted when you started working with Bryce?
Well, I'm absolutely honored to be here and share my story. I thought I knew my story. I had told it many times, but over the last 2 years, my story has completely changed. Thanks to vision training and you two sitting here. So thank you. I didn't realize in the first 12 seconds I was going to get emotional about it, but it's definitely okay. I think it's important, and I think vulnerability is the key of why this actually works and why we all got connected. I was born with cerebral palsy. A couple days before I was born, my brain bled. And right before I was born, they let my parents know that my brain had healed in whatever way it could, that it was no longer bleeding when I was born. And I think when I was born, I was given a really big gift. And that is that the doctors told my parents, we don't know what Justin will accomplish in life. And to me, that's a really big gift because I had zero expectation. So everything I did was a win in a way. And that's not to say it wasn't extremely challenging. I've undergone like 10 to 15 surgeries. I've learned how to walk 3 different times in my life. I had multiple surgeries on my eyes. And in addition to that, I really didn't learn how to read until I was about 21. So school didn't come easy. I was in and out of school. I was in physical therapy 5 days a week, driving 45 minutes as a kid, getting braces on my legs, sitting at the kitchen table, having people read my homework to me, trying to figure it out, fumbling through school. And, now looking back, and I knew this as an adult, like it was a disaster. I had tenacity, I had drive, I had the personality, I had the ability to connect with people. But and I chose to look at the positive. That's an outlook that I've tried to hold on to throughout my life, but fuck, it's hard when shit sucks.
Yeah.
Like, not wanting to pick a certain restaurant because you can't read the menu. You know? Not wanting to play a game because you can't read the board game. Yeah. Like, holy shit. But, I found my way. I graduated high school early, not because I was the smartest kid in the school, because I needed to get out of there. And I had a guidance counselor in middle school that when I went to high school, he wound up transferring to the high school. And out of about 6,000 students, he wound up being my guidance counselor. He got the letter L. And he asked me if I wanted to start a program with him to bring at-risk youth from Chicago, where I grew up, to Crow Creek Reservation in South Dakota. And of course I said yes. He was like my mentor. He was my guide. I spent hours and hours and hours in his office, not going to class and just talking about life from age 12 on. And what I didn't realize is that I was one of the at-risk kids he was talking about. And so we loaded up a Greyhound bus full of clothes and school supplies. We went to one of the most economically isolated communities in the country. And there we interviewed kids our own age, 15-year-olds. And everything was kind of the same. Talking about boys and girls and dances and sports and all of that. There was one big thing that was different, which was they talked about suicide a lot. They talked about family members committing, people in their life committing, and it really took me. And while we were there, we went to a powwow, and I was taking pictures of a kiddo there, in his full regalia, dancing. And when we got back from the trip, my guidance counselor asked to see all my photos. And when I went back into his office with all my photos, he let me know that kid committed suicide. The day after we left, he was 11 years old. And it was that moment in my life that I realized that I knew how to develop a team to support me in all my challenges, and I needed to figure out how to give back to the next generation. And that's sort of what set me on the path that I'm on here with Conscious Alliance, and also how we ultimately wound up all meeting.
Yeah.
In that piece that I brought up a minute ago of vulnerability, right?
Justin, tell us a little bit more about Conscious Alliance.
Conscious Alliance is an iconic community of bands, brands, artists, and fans on a mission to awaken compassion and end hunger nationwide. And we got our start by donating food to Native American reservations, some of the most economically isolated communities. So that's sort of the tie-in for me of my guidance counselor when I was 15, bringing me to a reservation, and then meeting the founders of Conscious Alliance as soon as I graduated high school.
And like a couple years in to that, starting the organization.
2 years maybe.
Yeah.
And joining them ever since. I've been involved for 21 years and running it for well over a decade. But
how many meals did you deliver when you started?
Oh, probably 100,000 or a couple 100,000.
How many did you do this year?
This year we just crossed 2.4 million for the year. So it's been amazing, but it's the reason I share the backstory is just, one, it's where I came from. Two, it's that being able to be vulnerable and connect. And three, like I mentioned, knowing how to develop a team to support me that ultimately has turned into a career of developing teams to support others. And, Seth, that's how you and I connected. Yeah. You mentioned it earlier, but I believe that we all show up where we're supposed to. And if we pay attention, we can make pretty authentic connections that go a long way. And I had a board member call me that day or the day before and say, I'm out of town. Can you run up to Red Rocks and lead this tour for me? I'd just been there the day before and led a tour with a different band with different set of donors. And, you sort of alluded to like why I was willing to tell my story. My experience of that interaction was, one, we connected right off the bat. And two, you led with the story of your kiddo. Yeah. And, your willingness to share and be vulnerable opened the door for me to, one, see the connection and go, wow, some of the things that your kiddo's going through are things that I've experienced in my life. Can I share back with you what I have experienced in life? Not so much like, hey, I lead with having cerebral palsy or being dyslexic when I meet people.
I am Justin. I have cerebral palsy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not recovering from it. I still have it, But truly, you and your wife opened the door by being willing to share. And, was I looking for anything? No, I actually had been pretty content with my life and knowing the challenges that I have and accepting them. Not for lack of trying to find other things, but I went through so much as a kid and went through so many different therapies, treatments, and stuff like that. I believe it or not, I don't do a bunch of reading research on what new is out there. So I didn't know.
Yeah.
And, you were willing to share and connect me with Bryce. And I like that you said you connected us, we met, and the next thing you knew, I flew out there, because how I remember it was, holy shit, am I really about to do this? Like, what is this like? I don't actually have any clue. I'm rolling the dice. What's it going to be like? But I remember meeting you, Bryce, on Zoom for the first time. And you asked me if I had a pen, which the answer was no. I got up from my desk to go get one and stumbled and almost tipped backwards and went and got a pen. I held it in front of my eyes for maybe 30 seconds. And I think your response to me, how I recall it, was something along the lines of, I don't want to overpromise you, but if you come work with me, I'll change your life.
Is it okay if I share a little bit of what you should have?
Absolutely.
So you let me know you'd had 3 eye muscle surgeries as a child, and the eyes were not working, like they weren't working together as a team. They weren't pointing or acting like they're doing the same thing. And if you think about what the eyes were doing, was a reflection of how your brain was functioning. Based off of the trauma and the damage that happened in utero, you came out not being able to access all the areas of the brain that you could or should. And so this wasn't an eye muscle strength or length issue. This was the coordination and them not working as a team or being best friends with each other. And I think you shared with me when they recommended the 4th surgery, you said, I'm done, stop this, and told your parents, like, I can't do this anymore. And then you follow that up with, I'm severely dyslexic. And I'd never heard anybody qualify their level of dyslexia. And I said, what does that mean? So we unpacked that and really...
Did you agree with my statement after I told you what I was?
Absolutely. I mean, I can say, even just from our first encounter, you immediately were in my Mount Rushmore of beautiful people in my life who I feel like it was my mission and purpose to help support. And when you held that pen up for 30 seconds, we did some screening tests, and it was so clear that your eyes were functioning independently of each other. They were not speaking the same language, and your brain was just having this kind of competition over which eye to use. And so I'm, of course, biased, but vision influences everything in life. Happiness, navigating through space, ability to read, ability to engage, ability to connect with our world. And your brain was on overdrive, not able to take your dominant sense of vision and know what to do with it. And, we went through the details, we went, what's involved. I said, we got to get you into Maryland. We got to put you through this intensive program where we're literally going to use your eyes as joysticks to tap into your brain, to rewire these connections, change the software, but to allow your brain to operate more fluidly with how the eyes were functioning and create pathways that didn't naturally develop on their own. And so you basically did what we call vision performance training, but what is physical therapy for the eyes, but really for the brain through the eyes. And you came in ready to rock, work so hard, we're so motivated, we're not going to allow failure to be an option. And that's the perfect patient, perfect person for us to really exceed all expectations and unlock so much of what was hidden. So it's been a absolute honor and privilege to be able to get to know you, to work with you, but also just to see where you are now in life compared to where you were and the things that are easier. Do you mind sharing some of what you can do now that you couldn't do previously or what you thought maybe was not even possible?
My lived experience is that I didn't have binocular vision, that I never looked out of my right eye. My left eye always dominated. When I went to the eye doctor, I could only see the green. I could never see the red, right? And I knew my right eye floated, right? I could see it in pictures that it was kind of underneath my eyelid. And I remember going home that Friday night, and I was in the hotel room alone, and I was sitting in bed, and I realized for the first time I could see the wall to the right of me. So kind of like right now, I wound up in a puddle, you know? And it's like, oh, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, your world was so constricted and so distorted to one side because your brain was having a hard time filtering, processing, using all the input coming in through the eyes. And it said, I'm going to just not listen to right eye. I'm going to just pick left eye because there's too much confusion I can't navigate. And the delayed gratification or delayed realization of what had shifted, you literally in 5 days proved what the vast majority of the medical world would say is impossible. And that was just like the first starting point. I mean, we're way past that.
Yeah.
But you develop depth perception. You develop the ability for not only your eyes to point and act like they're doing the same thing, but for the brain to turn on to that information, to understand space, and to see in 3D. And your world went from kind of collapsed and dislodged to the side to now, like you shared, seeing the wall on the right, but then also having vision be able to guide your movement.
Yeah, well, there was a lot that changed after that I'll go into, but I think that moment was really profound and worth sharing, right? Like, like, oh, there's something over here.
So what was the next big thing that you noticed?
So I went in Saturday morning for my last session with my suitcase, ready to go to the airport, and the doctor asked me, like, what do you want to do today? It's like, I don't know. I just had this like massive breakthrough. Like I don't really, you know. And the next prompt was like, let's write down some things you've never done in your life. And I remember at the top of the list was I've never caught a ball. God, it's so emotional, like still, which is truly a beautiful thing because I haven't lost the beauty of like what shifted, but I haven't caught a ball. And the doctor walked across the room with 12 bean bags and threw them to me from all different placements in the room. And I caught 11 of them. Like, I was the captain of my baseball team and I sucked. But we won the championship and I had the spirit to drive the team forward. But like, I got hit with the ball more than I made it on base from hitting the ball, which was probably only like once a season.
That was your secret to your on-base percentage.
100% it was. So then, that was like a huge unlock, like catching those bean bags and then I realized, even though in certain areas of my life I am a very confident person, the lack of confidence that I truly had. I went home and, doctor said, hey, get a Kindle. Get a Kindle for what?
What am I going to do with a Kindle?
One of my favorite stores growing up was Barnes & Noble. I used to buy books all the time and then realized I couldn't read them. Like, truly. And I went home and I found a book. And I don't even know how I found a book because I didn't know what kind of book I liked. I didn't know where to search for them. But I downloaded a book that I thought was a Netflix show that I had seen. That was like my only frame of reference. It wasn't. But it was a great book, and I finished it. I read 400 pages.
After probably never having read.
No, at the beginning, I told you I learned how to read at 21. Well, that's not true. I struggled my way through reading 2 books and then didn't read from the time I was 21 to 38. My eyes were watering. I couldn't find my place in the book. Like headaches, like disaster. But I knew I had to read this one specific book, so I read it. And then I didn't read, for over a decade since then. Well, I didn't lose my place on the page. I didn't get tired. I think I remember texting you and I just read for 2 hours. And I lost track of time.
So you can't, not to fast forward, but I had the opportunity to hang out with you, work with you for a second week, a couple months later. And we met for coffee one morning. And I remember you with your cappuccino walking across the room and came over and put down on the table. And you were it was like you had just seen Santa. You're the happiest person ever. He's like, was this a great cup of coffee? What's going on here? And then you shared well, how do you share?
I've never been able to carry a cup of coffee. I haven't been able to walk across a cafe. I would not eat at events because I couldn't carry my plate. And be like, I'm not hungry. I'm not twisted.
And people listening are probably like, what do you mean? Vision? How is that involved with carrying a cup of coffee?
I was too afraid of dropping it, of bumping into something, of stumbling, of falling, of all the things. And the things that I've realized since doing vision training with you is that how much of my life that I didn't realize I was pre-planning for. I would or would not go meet a friend on the 45th row of Red Rocks. I chose not to go to events. I chose not to play family games. Not because I'm boring, because I was scared. I realized that something I'll never give up, but a reason for it is hey, if I'm nice to the barista, can I get them to carry my coffee to the table for me? If I buy a friend coffee, can I get them to bring the coffee to the table? Those are all parts of my personality that I'm grateful I have, but it's not just altruistic. There's a reason why. For the last year, I've been thinking about survival, but that so many of my actions and the way that I operate through life were based on survival.
And being in that fight or flight response.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go, was that my nervous system has 38 years in gotten a break.
And not only did you learn how to have vision regulate your nervous system, you then also developed the ability for your eyes to work together as a cohesive team, so vision could guide movement, and you could walk and be able to see the cup of coffee with your side vision, see what was around you in the room, and navigate with balance, because now your visual world had opened up so much. And I know you shared even just working out and squatting, there's a seesaw that's not just tilted to one side. You have the ability to have that be smooth and balanced in the center.
I think I shared with you one time just via text, I jumped on a Bosu ball and did 45 squats.
That's
my physical being is so much healthier now than it was. Because everything's connected.
Yeah.
My obsession with working out is new because I can balance, I can see. Also this relates to the gym because I finally know who's walking towards me. And for the first time in my life, I can remember their name.
Have you noticed any changes with attention and focus?
The way in which I work is 1,000% different, where we would be working on a multi-year plan with boxes and different strategies. And I could look away from the computer and I would just have somebody read it to me. Where now we're sitting there and I'm engaged further in the process. I know exactly which box we're talking about. I know what quadrant I'm in. I can look down and write a note, which I'll speak to more, but I can write a note. I can look back up at the screen and I know where I'm headed. So I know which box to go back to.
And if you think about any change in eye movement is a change in attention, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. If you can't control your eyes and their ability to focus, and you can't control your mind and its ability to focus. So to be able to now know when I'm looking and talking with somebody, I know how to engage with their whole face rather than looking at their nose, their mouth, or around here because you can't take in all that space. Like that, I would imagine has opened a lot up for you, even just in terms of like interpersonal connection and confidence.
There's a lot of confidence there. And also from, like you mentioned before we were recording, you said, you walking up to me, I noticed a difference. If I sit down at dinner with a close friend, they're like, your whole face has changed. I know I mentioned the handwriting, but for the first time in my life, being able to write somebody a thank you card that I didn't have to scribe to somebody else and have them sign for me, And
the ability, I would imagine, to organize what you want to up here, what you want to put on the page, not have it go up or downhill, the sizing, the spacing of the letters and the words.
Yeah, I mean, I still prefer to use lines, but I've definitely written with outlines and it doesn't go straight up or straight down.
And I think one of the coolest things, too, about improved eye contact and people saying things look different, your eyes are now a physical manifestation of how your brain is functioning in terms of how they're using them. And when we first met, your left eye was pointing much higher than the right, and they were alternating which one was pointing straight. And it was almost like you didn't know where to look. And now they're getting the same signals where unless you're absolutely exhausted and the demand is really high, I mean, you can have your eyes act and direct towards something the exact way you want them to, which is such less stress and strain on the system, and so much just opens up an opportunity for so much more productivity and happiness with all your activities of daily living.
I have told people over the last few months, like, I just feel so much more comfortable in my skin. I feel more comfortable out. I feel like I've had more fun than I've had in a long time, and I'm always surrounded by fun. But I think I've always been holding on for dear life in a way.
Yeah.
But like going out now is enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so again, there's things in my personality that I thought were my personality, and they're not. They're based on coping mechanisms and lived experience. One of them, the first day I met you, you said, have you been tired your whole life?
Yeah.
And at first it threw me off because I kind of have endless energy, but I don't have endless energy. I have endless drive, and I have always been tired. And then I thought back to a few really close people in my life who are always like, why are you so tired? Like, what's going on? And that was it. Like, life's exhausting.
The amount of energy you were expending just trying to put everything together and making your brain interpret what you were seeing and not seeing is just, it was the same thing with my son, right? Like, so much energy, and his was just not having depth perception, seeing dull. But he would be wiped out because of that one thing. What you're dealing with is like an order of magnitude further than that. And I think what's so interesting about this, Justin, and Bryce, through your work, is what we've just heard about is not just a change in eyesight. And Bryce, as we talked about earlier with the difference between vision and eyesight, it's enough just to get people to understand that they can actually have a change in their eyesight. They can go from 2040 to 2020 or 2060 to 2040 without glasses, right? Like, that's enough of a leap for most of society to say, wow, this is powerful. What we've just heard is, Justin, your energy levels shifted. Your physical balance shifted. Your stamina and energy levels shifted. Your brain's interpretation of things, language perception, your writing, your ability to read, your appearance, your physical appearance changed. Your confidence and mental health shifted, right? Like all these components, and I probably missed 20 in there, all through work with your visual system and this training mechanism. And to me, that's one of the most important conversations that no one is having in the space of alternative medicine or conventional medicine, based on what your eyes and the visual input from that and the connection with your brain can actually do, and the domino effect it can have on the rest of your life. And this is just such a beautiful story. And thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for coming on here. And I know you're doing this because you know it's going to have an exponential effect. And that's what you're here in this world to do, right? And Bryce, because of your work with Justin, now there's going to be millions of more meals delivered through your capacity and that drive that you have for Conscious Alliance, right? Like this is a beautiful symbiotic relationship that is really excelling both. And I love this. And thank you so much for being here and sharing this with us today. And Bryce, thank you so much for what you did for my friend Justin.
Yeah, you two changed my life. And I feel like I'm in one of those stories that you read about, about somebody else, but it's happened to me. And I'm extremely grateful. Thank you. And, I hope for that mom, dad, or friend or young adult that's out there that catches this, that realizes that their life too can be different, that they don't have to go through multiple decades of challenge to get there. That's my hope, if we can just find one.
Yeah. And these hidden functional vision problems are everywhere, but they're hidden because we don't know what to look for. So just by opening up your experience and your conversation with the world, people now have a better sense of what's possible, where there can be hope, and what to look for. And I would say selfishly, my life has completely changed since meeting you. It has been beyond a privilege and an honor to get to know you, but to help show you what work to do to make these massive life changes and allow for all these wins to happen. And I appreciate you sharing some wins with me. I want every win being texted over or called about, because it just brings me so much gratitude to be able to offer this to the world, but then also to really feel like I'm living my purpose. And Seth, you and FPC have helped me really step into that. And this connection here would not have happened without both of you. So appreciate both of you. And the only thing I would say with you and your vision journey is things have gotten good, but we're just getting started. There's a lot more.
Well, let's go.
Let's do this.
I appreciate you both so much.
Wow. Justin, what a story.
So proud of him for just being open to share his story, but to join us.
What a beautiful human.
That was incredible.
I mean, just the serendipity of that meeting and the way this whole thing came together. And it's a really interesting moment to remember that these are things that can happen to us every single day. I mean, we did not expect that night. We didn't expect to meet somebody like Justin and expect him to be that vulnerable. I think his point of vulnerability, right? Like showing up vulnerable and you don't know what's going to happen. If he had not shared that story, there's no chance I would have gone to that next place. I wouldn't have recognized it. I just would have thought something was off, right? And I mean, that's so beautiful, but it's really complex, Bryce. Like his situation, I know I mentioned it earlier in the conversation before we brought Justin in, and everybody just heard that, but like that's a really complex case. and the improvements you were able to make with that across the spectrum are just amazing. And so who else can this help? And like, what are those stratifications of different types of individuals that you work with in the practice?
Yeah. So, I mean, we see all the ranges. I mean, we work with professional athletes in every sport imaginable, Olympians, Navy SEALs, Navy aviators, people who are at the top of the ladder in terms of where they already are functioning, and just to improve small percentage of points in certain areas that have cumulative effects. But we also work with individuals on the autism spectrum who don't have even language as their primary means of communication. And so often the eyes are almost not even connected to the body because there's these developmental visual delays in place. We work with CEOs and high-powered individuals who notice big drop-offs in performance throughout the day, or not being able to access their gifts or potential because something's holding them back. And surprise, surprise, it's often vision. We work with people with head injury. I mean, vision is always impacted after a concussion, not eyesight, but vision. And that can show up as in a sensory overload environments with lots of crowded visual stimuli. So the mall or grocery store becomes this stressful scenario where it's almost like you can't take in what's around you, and you just become tunneled and things become so much harder. And then the return to learn, return to work, return to screens becomes a big issue. We work with people whose prescriptions are always changing to find stability there. We work with people with eye turns or lazy eyes. And I do want to comment real quick, if I can, on just Justin's story, because literally no doctor would say what he's accomplished is possible. And 100% it's not possible in a 5-day program to get any improvement, no matter whether you're doing 12 hours of individualized work or 1,000 hours. And Justin is a perfect representation that vision is brain, right? He was born with a portion of his brain not healthy from what happened in utero. And we talked about vision being a learned process and learning from our life experiences, but it's learned early on from movement, and going from the world being static and just mom or dad's face to then the world opening up and developing the ability to sit upright and crawl and walk. And that bilateral integration using both sides of the body, that's the foundation from which we develop vision from. So often kids who skip over crawling or walk too soon, way more likely to develop an eye turn. In Justin's case, he didn't have the ability to have visually directed movement patterns the way that he was supposed to because of the cerebral palsy. And the reactive medical system said, okay, well, one of the eyes is pointing a different place than the other. We need to shorten or lengthen one of the eye muscles so that they can be straight. Surgery. That is a brain problem showing up through the eyes. And the attempt there is to adjust things mechanically. I can confidently say that best case scenario with any strabismus surgery, any eye muscle surgery, is a cosmetic cure, but never is there a functional cure, because a functional cure requires two-eyed learning from our life experiences to tap into and develop the visual pathways to respond to depth and to develop the ability to see in 3D. Not only did his first surgery not go as planned and wasn't successful, they did a second one because, surprise, surprise, after the first surgery, the eyes were still not working together. They then adjusted a different muscle, and they did it a third time. And somehow at a young age, he told his parents, I'm done. Stop it. We can't keep going down this path. And the one piece of this that had a red flag for me was, I'm not sure the strength or length of his eye muscles now because they've been surgically corrected so many times. And even with, almost like if we look at an analogy of driving, if like the wheel is displaced and that is appearing as center, you have to adjust how you're navigating the road. From his standpoint, it was a matter of giving him the feedback of what it feels like, what it looks like, and the depth that ensues when we can get the eyes to point together, and then develop more dynamic control over that. But he had structural changes that he didn't allow as a limitation in terms of function. And I could tell with that pen that he was talking about, I did simple screening tests, but just to make sure that the eyes could move in every direction. And of course, as he's doing that, I mean, they're dancing all over the place. but he had full range of motion. And so from there, it's kind of like, all right, well, the system is totally displaced, but even though we have two eyeballs in our brain, they're wired as one unit. And if they're not acting as one unit, we need to then reestablish function and develop the firing and wiring to support two-eye learning so that we can then develop that two-eye system that operates as one. And from his standpoint, I mean, definitely a complicated case. I told him from day one, this is not a slam dunk. I'm certain we can help, but I'm not sure how much we can help. I'm going to have to do testing in person to know for sure. But if you're willing to take a chance, you're going to come fly to us for a week. If day one, I determined that we can't help you, I said to him, I will buy your plane ticket back home and you don't have to pay a penny. But it was, of course, the complete opposite. And it was, let's do this.
I mean, we take a super complicated case like that and then, contrast that with, you've been on the who's who of biohackers podcasts, right? You're all over the place. And these people are coming to see you. You have the, celebrity doctors coming in left and right from across the pond. An individual, and I really encourage you all to listen to the podcast that Bryce did with Dave Asprey on Dave Asprey's podcast, because this is somebody who's literally tried everything. Like, he's done all the biohacking more than anyone and still says this is one of the most profound things he's ever seen or done for himself and his own brain function in his entire career. So there's this spectrum between Justin, who we just had here with cerebral palsy, basically giving up on reading and seeing the wall next to him and walking through, a cafe with a cup of coffee. And you have these biohackers who have done everything, and they're both experiencing this massive ROI from coming to see you.
I am so humbled and so grateful that we've had the opportunity to work with so many influential people who have, during the process, said, this is one of the most profound things I've ever done for myself, one of the coolest things I've ever done, and oh my God, the world needs to know about this. That we then film a podcast with them at the end of the week, sharing their experience. And with enough of these out there now, I mean, people are recognizing that biohacking your vision is a thing, and that vision influences so many other aspects of health and longevity and wellness and consciousness. And now functional vision is getting a seat at the medical table, which is so cool to be a part of and to be a messenger for. And we're just getting going with this. So, I mean, it's pretty incredible to see eyes opening, pun intended there, to this type of work.
And the cool thing is that, like, insurance covers us at 150% of value, and you don't even have to worry about the business behind it because it just runs itself. Right?
Oh, yeah. Simple, easy, no problem at all there.
Totally. So, as you can tell, we're joking, but Bryce deals with the same problems that every other alternative functional medicine doctor deals with, which is he is this brilliant individual who's come across something that can help hundreds of thousands and millions of people, yet you now also have to run a business. You have to be the CEO of a business. You have to deal with hiring. You have to deal with pricing. You have to deal with business models. You got to deal with operations and finance, management, marketing, sales, all of these other things
much
together.
Less helping support the complicated cases that we're actually working with.
Exactly. So you have developed a business model that's not unique to us, but is unique to many of the listeners and most of medicine. And I think that underlying business model really helps to support the work that you do.
I would not be anywhere close to where I am now without FPC, you and your incredible team, because you literally got us to get out of the weeds and showed us a light in terms of what was possible. We went from fee for service, exchanging time for money, and running a rat race where I was blessed to have revenue increasing every year and a crazy impressive network of docs referring to us, but we were all stretched too thin.
You were doing all the work?
We were doing all the work. We're running the hamster wheel. I was doing everything, wearing all the hats. And there was so much trust I had in you and in FPC that not everyone's going to have to go through this, but we flipped everything upside down. everything, new systems, new tech, new team, new location, new model, new program, new everything to figure out how can we deliver the best outcomes for our patients in the shortest amount of time. And for me, that was the most important thing that mattered. How do we help people and help more people rather than the operations and business side and financial side? Yet when you can figure out how to maximize everybody's strengths and really escort each person along the journey of recovery to the destination, you're then not stuck in all the details and weeds. And, we went from this fee-for-service to a program-based model, which I know a lot of the listeners are either in or in the process of getting towards. And it allows for better results faster. It allows for much higher ceilings in terms of outcomes. But also now we're getting people in and out faster so we can help more people, and we have the ability to see that many more patients with higher level care. I mean, it's almost a dream come true that we took what was never taught to us in school, what none of us ever know how to do, kind of found the cheat code for it in terms of how do we make this simpler and more efficient so that now on the other side of it, we can take on cases like Justin, not worrying about anything other than how do we help this person.
If you don't mind sharing, I remember the first few conversations that we had when we were like just a budding friendship, right? And I remember you saying like, man, this is not like functional medicine. Like we have to see people. We're different. Like we have to see people for 6 months, sometimes 12 months, right? They have to come in a couple times a week. Like this is how it works. Like there's no way I'm going to be able to put a program together. And we just kept refining into how do we align incentives with the outcome of the patient, right? How do we just drive towards the best incentive for them? What is going to drive that? Oh, well, if I could actually ensure that they were going to come in this many times, they would have a much better experience. Okay, well, let's build a business model around that rather than letting the patient decide when they want to show up and if they want to pay. And you know what? Actually, I don't feel like coming in today because I know my credit card's going to get banged for this session, or I'm feeling better. So I don't really need to keep coming in. And we both know that when you're feeling better, you're like still going up the roller coaster, right? Like we still have so much more work to do to make this thing stick.
We ran so many numbers together, and Justin talked about vulnerability. I shared a lot of that with you of just being scared with this and what does this mean? Because this is working. It's not working well, but it's working. And when we ran numbers on average amount of treatment for patients and average timelines for patients, we helped a ton of people. We helped probably the same percentage of people, but it was, all right, recommendation is you coming in twice a week in office, and then you're doing home vision training on the days you're not here. People would come in consistently after first few weeks, and then the headaches would get better. The double vision would improve. They started hitting the ball in baseball, and it's like, oh, great. Okay, I'm going to slow down, not come as much, or then I'm going to fall off. And then, of course, the yo-yo effect, things get worse. You come back, and when we ran numbers, people were working with us for so long, actually for more sessions than they would have had we just hit this hard from the beginning. And then it was your guidance on, people need to commit to a timeline or time frame to get to a certain base camp. And we talk about this as like we're climbing the mountain. Top of the mountain is where things should be for you and your age and your visual demands. We're not going to let somebody commit to a place where it's not going to achieve lasting results. You do a handful of sessions and your headaches get a little better, but we're not addressing the root cause and why they're occurring, you're going to fall backwards. And ethically, like, it was so clear for me to see that's not the operation I want to run. I don't want somebody to say, I tried this and it didn't work. This work works, but you have to make sure you're doing the right prescribed amount of work and the right work to get there. And so, having this program-based model where families and patients commit to a timeline or time frame at least ensures we're going to guarantee X percentage of improvement. And then people just show up not worrying about what do I have to pay for or what's an added service, or us saying, you would do really well with optometric phototherapy on top of this care, which means you're looking at this colored wavelength light for this many minutes, 3 days a week. And we want you to add this, but then they say, okay, well, how much extra is that? It's no. This is an all-in approach. We are determining what is best for you and your care. we were doing a great job explaining that and articulating that and communicating that, but then they just are ready to be escorted, and all they have to do is show up and do their best, and we'll take care of the rest.
So, and in that, I think there's an associated predictability for the patient and their outcome, right? But there is for you and your business too. I need to bring in this many new patients this month, right? I need to have this many sessions, and you have the predictability of that rather than, gosh, I hope people keep showing up to pay this money.
We had some weeks where we'd have 200 plus therapy patients, and some weeks where we'd have 110. Same staff that are either stretched too thin and overwhelmed or standing around twirling their thumbs. And now there's such predictable everything that I know you've let me know when is the trigger point to hire another doctor or hire more therapists or add another location. And so honestly, for the first time ever, I am showing up to work every day, loving what I'm doing, all in with every single case. Damn, I'm getting emotional here. And doing this from entirely my heart, which wasn't always the case. And I have more energy than I've ever had because you've helped me systematize this to get to a place where I can have a massive impact on the world.
And you guys did the work. And it's not easy. I mean, I remember the conversations that we had of like, I can't show up in front of somebody and tell them it's going to be $6,000 because right now it's $350 for an office visit, and all I have to do is sell them on the idea that they have to pay $175 for their next vision therapy meeting.
And then the proof will be in the pudding, and then they'll want to continue. But what if they don't? We don't have to deal with that now.
And instead of now, no. The price point is just built in to what is the best thing for the patient, and it's predictable for the business, and everybody wins. It's an aligned incentive that everybody's far more excited about than this old fee-for-service model that was really not designed for the work that you do.
And the old fee-for-service model, if it is covered by insurance, where insurance dictates the care you're offering your patients. I mean, I'm sorry, but no insurance company is going to know even close what this work looks like and what's needed. And I'm doing that patient a disservice if I'm not letting them know what is in the best interest of their care, their development, and their happiness in life.
And it's so interesting because the analogy here, like I took the leap of faith with my son, Atlas, right? With everything that was going on with him, and was just like, here's a guy who knows what he's talking about. And so I'm going to take the leap of faith and bring him in for an entire week and see what happens. And what we got was a dramatic change in his entire life across every dimension, right? And from not having any depth perception to not having his eyes really work together and being completely burned out from all the energy that he was using to all of a sudden being like this happy-go-lucky kid that was just amazing. Like so much improved in his life because of that. And the work he did, right? And the work he put in those sessions, in the intensive and afterwards. And I saw the exact same thing happen with you in your business, right? You had to take that leap of faith with somebody that you trusted. And then you put in the work. And when you put in that work, you get to a point where it just continues to have benefit for you, right? So, I mean, Bryce, you haven't been a client of Freedom Practice Coaching for over a year.
I miss you guys.
I miss you too, man. We want to have you at the events and stuff, but this is also what we like, right? We're not here to keep people around forever. We don't want to be a crutch. We want to teach the fundamentals and give you all of the systems. And you did the work in a systematic way that allowed you to have continued business performance without continuing to need work with us. And yes, there's the community and there's the events and there's all of the other benefits. And some people stay with us for a really long time. And you got to the point where you're like, hey, I've got it. I'm good. And the business has continued to improve because you stay proactive with the things in your business that you need to. And I think that's such an important lesson for us on the health side, right? And then also on the business side, that there is that trusted guidance with somebody who has the confidence that they can get you to that next place. It's the leap of faith. And then there's also the associated work that has to be done to get to that point.
And I would urge anyone who's listening to question or think about how coachable you are. Because I was so overwhelmed, I got to a point where I realized the only thing I can do is just let go and trust the process and trust the people in the organization guiding this process. And knowing how many businesses you and FBC have worked with and the diversity behind all of those, it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach to anything. And sure, there are certain practices that are good for everybody to have and implement, but you guys took such a customized approach to me because I was not a functional medicine practice. And I now look at myself as a functional eye doctor, but very different testing and frequency of visits and everything. And yet we found the secret sauce to be able to get out of the weeds.
So I want to bring this back to attention because it's a really interesting topic, and I've been dealing with a lot of this lately. I think our world is in an attention crisis. I think, social media has optimized for attention grabbing, right? It is the single most optimized thing for scrolling and the videos and everything behind Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all of these different things, right? Yet at the same time, we see it in our business that people say, hey, I can't do this right now. I have too much going on. I'm too overwhelmed. There's too many things happening, right? Their attention is so diffuse and so all over the place that they can't actually zone in on what is the most important and critical thing for them. And I know that attention has a whole lot to do with vision, right? And we've been talking about that in the visual system. So we talked a lot about these individual cases. We've talked about intensives, with people coming in, flying in for a full week. We've talked about people doing, continued training with you. What we haven't talked about is the masses. And if we sequence this around the idea of attention being this really scarce resource now that we as humans are dealing with, how are you looking at that? And what approaches do you have for the masses versus people just, versus millions of people having to fly to Bethesda, Maryland to spend a week with you?
And I clearly recognize the intensive program with us for a week and then the 3-month home program after is not for everybody. And realistically, most of the world is not going to be able to come in for that, have access to that, put life on hold, or even know it's possible. And so my big thing is I want to help as many people as possible and have vision be what we're all at least looking at predominantly as having an influence in so many aspects of overall health. And we created this online vision training program called ScreenFit, which is kind of like doing body weight work at home instead of going to the gym and working with a trainer. If you go work with a trainer, you have access to all the equipment and strength and cardio, you're going to get in better shape faster, but not everybody can do that. So if you do sit-ups, air squats, and push-ups at home and you're compliant, you can get into better shape. ScreenFit was this program we developed. It's 30 different lessons. Each lesson is 10 to 15 minutes to do, but it's really designed to help as many people as possible to get their eyes to work together as a team, to get their eyes, brain, and body to be on the same page, but to really develop the visual skills and abilities for life. And low barrier to entry, low price point, but accessible for anybody. And then the easiest way for somebody to take a step across that start line to just get going on their journey to vision improvement. Attention is so intimately related to vision, and it's something that is constantly being pulled in every direction. But even if we think about screens and the digital world we're in and the fact that our attention is being pulled all over the place, when we are under stress from our environment or when we are on the screen, our thinking, our vision, and our attention become tunneled in. And we all have the opportunity to use our eyes as ways or joysticks to tap into the brain to access other areas of processing, to allow airplanes to take off and land more fluidly, to be an air traffic controller. But vision is like the low-hanging fruit there in terms of selective attention, divided attention, sustained attention, and the ability to access so much more that we all have resources for. And something like ScreenFit, there's lessons in there that nothing requires equipment. You can do these practices in the bathroom at a stoplight in between Zoom calls, but allows people to just start opening up vision and allowing vision to take a seat in so many other areas of life.
So what are some of the results? I mean, we've heard the results on the intensives and the work you do in clinic. What are some of the results with ScreenFit that people could expect, or how long does it take before you start seeing changes?
So most people notice improvements in symptoms within the first week.
Whoa.
We've had thousands of people go through this. This is crazy to say, but 100% of people who have finished the program have seen a reduction in symptoms. And I want to knock on wood when I say this. Not everybody gets to the end. A lot of people go in with the intention of saying, I want to read a little faster. And so maybe after 5 days, 10 days, you're reading a little faster and you're like, you know what, I'm good to go. But you then have access to the program. And it's a program that the whole family can be tapped into. But it has exceeded my expectations in terms of what's possible. I mean, we've seen many people say, I don't need reading glasses anymore. I no longer get motion sick. I can be on screens all day long. I'm not having to schedule meetings before noon because I know after noon, I'm not in a place to have divergent thinking. I'm not in a place to think outside the box. And there's a lot of famous people like Steve Jobs talking about scheduling meetings in the mornings or late afternoon because of decision fatigue and cognitive fatigue that happens later in the day. That doesn't have to be the case. I mean, we can all get our brains to a place where we are functioning at our highest level and firing on all cylinders, no matter how much we're asking of our brains and our bodies, but it requires work to get there. And just like we exercise and strengthen our bodies, we can exercise and strengthen that eye-brain connection. And that's really what ScreenFit does. It's a nice way to start seeing improvements there. And for many people, that's all you need. And when you need more, then there's more aggressive ways to get involved with us.
And, there's another component about this too with screens. One thing you got me on years ago, right, was digital performance lenses. And I had never worn glasses. I still don't wear glasses out in normal life. I have 20/20 eyesight. I get that right? Okay, great. And, but I do not leave home without my glasses specifically for screens. And I loved when you explained that. I was like, oh, do I need to get those yellow tint glasses so I cut out the blue light? And it's so much more than that. And that's another component. And you guys actually have this, right? You have these lenses now.
And we created these. They were called digital performance lenses. They allow the visual system to operate at a better, more robust level for longer periods of time by decreasing some of the visual stress associated with near, but the brain's response to that stress. So they're therapeutic in nature, not compensatory. They're not like normal glasses where you put them on, they take something blurry, makes it clear, that becomes your new normal, and then you go down the cycle. These allow the focusing and eye teaming systems to be in a little bit better synergy, and they make it so that there's not as much effort required to engage with near. There is a really high quality blue light filter in there, but it's way more than the blue light filter. It is a specific prescription that about 80% of the population do best with this one prescription. We have about 10,000 data points to show what that prescription is, but it's the least amount of improvement to deliver the desired result. And I would say adults benefit from them. Sometimes they have to be customized depending on your profile, but kids, no child should ever be on a tablet without their DPLs, without their digital performance lenses on.
Yeah, my son wears his constantly. He's the only kid in class that wears them, and the other kids love it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a place where you can get these.
My 3 kids know that there's no chance they're going to be on a tablet without these on. And I for sure limit the amount of tablet time that they're on because I know better. But screen time is this new pandemic. And we're now learning what that's doing to social development, emotional development, cognitive development, but now, of course, vision development. And these digital performance lenses, it's a safety net. It's ensuring that the brain is not responding to stress in the same way. And a really nice way to look at these is it's kind of like wearing a weight belt if you're squatting. You're still lifting the weight, but it's ensuring your core is engaged and you have good form. These glasses help support the focusing system so that the brain doesn't have to put as much effort in to get these systems to function the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I feel like screens are almost like sugar in our diet, right? They kind of just like crept in. no one really knew that it was going to have an effect on us. Now they're having all of these effects, but it took a long time to pinpoint like it was this. And then it's really hard to cut out, right? And we live in a world where you have to be on a screen. So what can we do? Well, we can make different choices about how we use this. How do we protect ourselves? And by the way, the exercises that we do, right? So like, it's okay to eat a little bit of sugar if your diet's not 100% sugar. So if you're doing the Screen Fit program and you're wearing digital performance lenses, you can be on screens. And as long as you're also, looking away and, the 20-20-20 rule, right?
Getting movement breaks
and all these other things that you can do. I mean, there's a way to navigate the world that we're in today without having to disconnect and avoid while not putting your visual system and your brain function at risk.
And the number one toxicity from our environment to us as humans are screens. And they're not going anywhere. So if we don't get ahead of this and if we don't know better so we can do better, I mean, we talked about half of the world being nearsighted in 25 years. That's just one piece of the puzzle, right? I mean, we're now seeing generations of kids and of young adults who don't know how to talk to somebody, don't know how to maintain eye contact, and are relying on AI to figure out how do I respond to an awkward situation so they don't have to face it and learn from it themselves. And there's so much we can do to not make screen time as damaging to that eye-brain connection.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. I think we hit some really big topics. I think the audience now understands this is a problem, right? Like this is a huge issue. They know there's something they can do about it. In a individual basis, they know there's something they can do about it for their entire patient population. If they want to prescribe Screen Fit across the board, they can get their families on this. I mean, there are things, the digital performance lenses, there are things that people can do today for very low cost or very low effort that they can work in their other routines. They can really be protective, proactive, and beneficial for their brain function. I guess to pull it back to you as a leading medical professional, a CEO of a thriving business, knowing that our audience is typically functional integrative medicine practitioners, your colleagues, right? Other business owners or those trying to establish a business. You've done something miraculous, like almost against all odds, as a luminary in this field, with everybody saying, A, this is not possible, and B, this is crazy, and C, even if you get through those things on the medical side, how are you going to run a business? And what's your advice for other practitioners, your peers who are in your space, for trying to navigate all this stuff?
And it's super hard and it's super challenging. And my advice would be, think about the areas of your business, your practice, your patient care, your operations, and your personal life. Think about the areas that you feel traction in, or that are hard, or that make you feel uncomfortable. And those are really the keys to helping you find freedom to focus on what it is you truly love and what your purpose is. And to not have to worry about the tech stack and the operations and the program agreements and all the just day-to-day, to just focus on changing lives and changing every single patient's life that we work with. That was so clearly what I needed, where I needed to get to. And I didn't know how to get there, but I trusted my intuition. So trust your intuition, lean on your coaches, and hopefully if you're listening, you at least have some sort of file with FPC. Hopefully you're even a client of FPC's. There's so much gold there, but you really have to find where your resistance is, and then that is what you unpack, because that's going to open up so many doors.
Wow. Bryce, thank you. What a fun conversation. Guys, this has been Dr. Bryce Appelbaum, CEO and founder of MyVisionFirst, Screen Fit, digital performance lenses. We can go on and on. You're building a whole ecosystem of companies, which is really, truly amazing, and helping thousands and very soon probably millions of people in the world with this, helping other practitioners as well. It's just absolutely incredible. We're going to link to MyVisionFirst. We're going to link to ScreenFit in the show notes. We'll link to Conscious Alliance from Justin earlier, which is also a tremendous organization feeding millions of Americans who don't have access to food. And I think all of this just connects in a really harmonious, beautiful way. And thank you for the work you're doing. It was really amazing to be able to sit here and have this conversation today.
Such an honor to be here. Thank you for helping me figure out how to get out of my own way and to see what was possible when a lot of times I was very myopic and guarded there. And so appreciate the support and love that you and your team have offered myself and my team. And I hope this lights fires under everybody listening, at least to be able to find another area of life that you can tap into and focus on so that you can really expand your reach and help as many people as possible. So appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks for doing the work. Thanks for being a guiding light for others.
Our pleasure, man.